Not a journey through bright streets or sunny fields, but a journey into the shadows where the walls whisper and the air grows cold, and every creak of the floorboards tells a story of what came before. These are stories of haunted houses, stories of places that never found peace, stories where families came and went, but the houses themselves remained, waiting, watching, remembering. You see, some houses are more than wood and stone. Some houses hold memories, pressing them into the very walls, trapping them in the silence of empty rooms. Tonight, you will hear 3 such tales. The first, a lonely farmhouse where doors slammed on their own, and no one could explain why. The second, an abandoned Victorian home, where ghostly footsteps echoed through its empty halls, even long after it had been deserted. And the third, a cursed house, so heavy with dread and misfortune that no one could ever stay there for long. Each story will unfold slowly, with time to breathe, time to imagine, time to drift into the quiet darkness of night. So settle in. Let the shadows stretch long. Let the silence wrap around you, and listen carefully as we step together into the haunted houses of memory. And so, our journey begins. Far from the city lights, down a narrow dirt road, there once stood a farmhouse. At first glance it seemed ordinary, a place of work, of family, of quiet nights. But soon, those who lived within its walls discovered that the house was anything but quiet. Because in that farmhouse, the doors slammed on their own. Story 1. The farmhouse where doors slammed on their own. It is said that every old house carries a memory. The walls hold whispers, the floors remember footsteps, and the doors, sometimes the doors remember hands that no longer touch them. The farmhouse at the edge of the fields was no exception. Long before anyone called it haunted, it was simply a home. Built in the late 1800s, the farmhouse was designed to last. Heavy oak beams supported the roof. The walls were thick. The farmhouse stood proudly against the wind and rain. For years, families lived there, eating at its heavy wooden table, sleeping beneath its roof, raising children in the fields that stretched beyond it. But then, the noises began. At first, it was only the doors. They slammed in the night, loud enough to wake the family from sleep. They checked for drafts. They checked the locks. But the windows were closed, the air still. Yet the doors continued to slam. Always at night, always when the house should have been silent. The family grew uneasy. They tried to ignore it, telling themselves it was nothing, just old wood shifting in the frame. But deep down they knew better, because sometimes they could hear footsteps too. Slow, deliberate, pacing across the upstairs hall. They would rush to check, only to find nothing but empty rooms. The children whispered about ghosts. The parents said no, it was just the house settling. But the doors kept slamming. Harder, louder, as though something unseen wanted to be heard. One winter night, the father decided he had had enough. He stayed awake, sitting in the dark kitchen, waiting for the noise. Hours passed. The fire in the stove burned low. And then the sound came. A door upstairs slammed shut with such force that the dishes rattled in their cabinets. The father grabbed a lantern and climbed the stairs. His breath echoed in the cold air. He reached the hallway and saw every door slowly opening, one by one. No wind, no draft, just the silent turning of old brass knobs. The family did not stay much longer after that. They left, quietly, moving away without telling the neighbors why. For years the farmhouse sat empty, its shutters banging in the wind, its doors creaking open and closed though no one walked its halls. Travelers passing on the road would sometimes hear the slam of a door echoing across the empty fields. They would glance toward the house, shivering, and quicken their steps. To this day, locals say the farmhouse still stands. And if you listen closely, you can hear the doors. But the farmhouse was only the beginning, for there are houses where the walls do not just remember. They whisper. They echo. They replay moments long gone, like a record stuck on repeat. And so our second story begins. Story 2, The Victorian House of Echoes. In the heart of a small town, hidden behind a row of overgrown hedges, there stood a Victorian home. Its once grand windows were boarded up, its paint faded and peeling, its roof sagging with the weight of years. But once long ago, this house had been alive with laughter. Children had run down its sweeping staircase. Music had filled its parlor. Guests had danced late into the night beneath the glittering light of its chandelier. But time moved on, and the family who owned the house moved away. The home was abandoned. For decades it sat empty, a relic of another time. Until one summer, a group of teenagers decided to step inside. They had heard the stories, of course, stories of strange lights in the windows, of voices that carried on the wind. But curiosity, as it often does, led them closer. They pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped inside. Dust rose in clouds around their feet. The air was heavy, still untouched. They whispered to each other, their voices bouncing off the walls. But then, another sound answered them. Footsteps. Slow, measured, coming from the upstairs hall. The teenagers froze. One of them called out, asking if someone was there. Silence followed. Then, the footsteps came again, crossing from one end of the hall to the other. The sound was clear, impossible to mistake. Someone was up there. Gathering their courage, they climbed the staircase, each step groaning under their weight. They reached the landing. The hall stretched before them, doors lining each side. But the hall was empty. Dust lay undisturbed on the floor. No footprints. No sign of life. And yet, the footsteps continued. This time they echoed not from the hall, but from the parlor below. The teenagers ran to the railing, peering down into the shadows. Again, no one. Only empty air, and the heavy silence pressing in. But the echoes would not stop. The teenagers fled the house, hearts pounding. But they could not shake the sound of footsteps echoing behind them. Neighbors later reported seeing the faint glow of lanterns moving in the windows, though the house had long been empty. Years passed. Others entered, drawn by curiosity or daring. Some returned, shaken and pale, recounting slow, deliberate steps across floors that should have been still. Others never lingered long enough to speak. The Victorian home had a reputation now. It walked in the night, a ghostly echo of its past. By the 1950s, the house was fully abandoned. Windows shattered, paint peeling, vines crawling up the walls. Yet the footsteps never stopped. Children dared each other to enter during summer evenings, only to run screaming when the echoing steps began. Adults tried to renovate or clean, but strange occurrences kept them away. Lights flickered. Cold spots appeared. Doors opened and closed. Tools vanished. Footsteps climbed the stairs as if unseen residents still walked there. The house became more legend than building, remembered more in whispers than in reality. A caretaker was hired in the 1970s to watch over the property. Practical and skeptical, he believed in nothing supernatural. On his first night, he settled into the downstairs parlor, confident the stories were nonsense. But at precisely 2 o'clock in the morning, footsteps came. Slow, steady, moving from one end of the house to the other. He grabbed his flashlight. Empty rooms. Ice-cold air. Old perfume lingering. The caretaker left before the week ended, convinced the house itself remembered lives long gone. Theories about the house abound. Some say it is the spirit of Mrs. Whitmore, the lady of the house who died young. Others say the land itself carries memories, replaying events long past. Still others whisper that the house has its own consciousness, echoing the lives that once filled its halls. Today the house stands crumbling. Shattered windows, sagging roof, and overgrown gardens. But if you pass by at night, the soft sound of footsteps can still be heard. Always footsteps. Following, pacing, lingering, unseen but undeniably present. Walking through the house today, one would find broken doors, dust-heavy air, and floorboards groaning under each step. The parlor is empty, yet if you listen closely, faint music might drift from memory, a piano long gone. Staircase banisters worn smooth by hands of the past. On the landing, doors slightly open, waiting as if expecting someone. You push one open. The room is bare. Wallpaper faded. Air colder. And then footsteps. Not yours. From above, circling, relentless, slow. You freeze. They continue, pacing, waiting, echoing the house's history. The Victorian home is remembered by those who once lived there, those who dared enter, and perhaps by something that never left. Pass by on a quiet night and listen. Some houses never grow silent. Some footsteps never stop walking. The echoes linger in the hallways, in the staircases, in the empty rooms, forever replaying the lives that once filled the house. The story of the Victorian home is not just of abandonment. It is of memory, of lingering spirits, and of footsteps that echo long after life has departed. And so, we move to our final story. Story 3. The cursed house that no one could stay in. Some houses are haunted, others are forgotten, but some are cursed. In a small town, there exists a house no family could call home for long. It rejected those who dared to enter. Its history is not of joy or laughter. It is of misfortune, accidents, and restless nights. The land itself seemed to resist life. Crops would not grow. Travelers felt a heaviness in the air. Some whispered of ancient rituals or old violence. When the house was built, the curse seemed to awaken. The first family, the Johnsons, stayed briefly in the early 1900s. Strange things happened immediately. Locked doors were open. Windows rattled. Children whispered of voices in corners. Tragedies struck, accidents, illnesses, falls, unexplained injuries. The family left within 3 years, never returning. New families arrived in the decades that followed. Each faced similar patterns. Illness, fear, noises. Footsteps pacing. Heavy pounding on walls. The house did not want them. Every family eventually abandoned it, leaving possessions behind, fleeing the presence that could not be named. Neighbors told stories too. Flickering lights, screams echoing in the night, and mail carriers who refused delivery after hearing someone cry inside an empty house. In the 1970s, a young couple tried to renovate, believing there was no curse. For weeks, all seemed quiet. Then nights became restless. Scratching in walls. Tools vanished. The wife felt watched. One night, the husband woke to find her staring at a wall, unresponsive. She whispered, "It doesn't want us here." They left immediately. The house gained its full reputation. No one stays. No one ever stays. Those who dared spend a night in the house reported the same. Whispers in the dark, footsteps following from room to room, and a dread so heavy it pressed down on their chest. Few lasted more than a night. The house pushed them out with fear and misfortune. Today the house remains. Windows broken, roof sagging, walls rotting, dust and cobwebs fill the rooms. The air feels alive, as if the house itself watches. Footsteps still echo, soft but deliberate. A presence lingers. The cursed house has memory, awareness, and will. No one has ever truly belonged there. If you were to enter, you would find sagging steps, reluctant doors, cold air swirling with dust. The kitchen smells of mildew, the floors creak, paint peels revealing old wood. From upstairs, footsteps move steadily across the floor. You climb the stairs, each step groaning, hallways stretching long and narrow. Doors line the walls, some slightly open, others firmly shut. One room, bare, wallpaper faded, air colder. Then footsteps behind you. Slow, deliberate, drawing closer. You turn, but the hallway is empty. The house waits, alive, remembering every soul who dared to enter. The cursed house is more than a building. It is a warning. Not every place welcomes the living. Some places never will. If you ever find yourself near such a house, one no one dares to stay in, one that seems to breathe in the silence of the night, remember this story. Listen closely. The walls may whisper, the floors may remember, and the air may carry a presence that was never meant to be ignored. The house is alive in memory and shadow. It is cursed, and it will never let you belong. And so, our journey through the haunted houses comes to an end. We began with the farmhouse, its doors slamming in the night, pushed by unseen hands. We wandered through the Victorian home, staircases echoing with ghostly footsteps, empty rooms alive with echoes of the past. Finally, we stood before the cursed house, rejecting all who entered, waiting, silent yet alive. 3 houses, 3 stories, 3 places where the living and the lost seem forever intertwined. Are they warnings? Reminders? Or simply echoes fading into the dark corners of memory? Perhaps some houses remember us more than we remember them. Perhaps the walls keep secrets we were never meant to hear. But now the night grows still. The stories are told, and it is time for rest. If you find yourself drifting into dreams, let the houses fade. Let the whispers quiet. Let the shadows dissolve into calm. For tonight the doors are closed, the footsteps have stopped, and the haunted houses are left behind in silence. Sleep well, traveler, until next time.